I'm here to tell the story of my daughter, Heather Nicole, and her journey through the torment of drugs. She died June 10th, 2019. But I got to have 4 days with her, and it was the most precious thing to me to have those 4 days, because she had been kind of AWOL for about 3 years. She was found in a wooded area, naked and not breathing, on June the 5th. I had a really bad time that day. I'd been looking for her for a long time. Someone would say they saw her out on I-45 in 1960 or in an area that wasn't very savory, and unbeknownst to my husband, who would have kind of had a fit, I would go out there, make excuses, and I would go and look for her. It was an area where it really wouldn't be safe for just about anybody, but probably especially a woman at night. But I found that at the 5 o'clock traffic was when most of the people sort of came out of the woodwork and under the underpasses and had their signs and were trying to collect money. That's where she had been seen, oddly enough, by her very best friend one day. And they made eye contact briefly, and her friend looked away because she didn't want my daughter to be so embarrassed about her standing with a sign. My daughter began playing around with cannabis when she was about 15, 16 years old. There was a decision made at that time to send her to a really wonderful boarding school that we thought would take her mind off of some of that, and horseback riding was there, and she loved that. So we did. We sent her there. That's where she met the father of my grandson. But the two together became good drug buddies. And she went ahead and graduated without getting into too much trouble other than the cannabis. And I say that like it's no big deal, but it was a big deal for me. And my daughter came home from graduation. She and John, that was his name, or is his name. He is still a drug addict, sadly, as a little caveat to the side, and I understand he's on the streets in Bakersfield, California. But they got married and had a son named Jacob, which I ended up raising. After a while of in and out of drugs and rehab, they divorced, and she really got sober. And she was sober for 14 years. She married a young man from Mexico. His name was Luis, wonderful young man. But he was illegal, so they decided to go back to Mexico because they were told if they went back, told him he crossed illegal, they would say, okay, well, we're going to give you a pass, and you came back and you can go back. But they told him it would be 10 years. She had to make that decision to leave, which I had Jacob, her son, most of his time at that, but she chose to stay in Mexico with him. She would cross the border every day. She became a loss prevention officer. She was doing well in her work. She was one of the top people ever in JCPenney's anyway. They didn't have cameras, and she had an instinct. She could catch those people stealing left and right. Then she moved from that area, Piedras Negras, Mexico, over to Nuevo Laredo, where she got a job at Sears. That ultimately ended up being sort of the downfall, but she worked there for years, again, top-notch loss prevention officer. And after about at 10 years, they kept giving their money to lawyers and people who were going to tell them they could get Louise, into the United States. It never happened. They kept the money. And she started to feel a breakdown. She'd just been there so long. And though she could visit us, it's still a 6-hour drive. It wasn't something you just hopped in the car to go do. She loved her job, but again, it was just starting to really get to her. So now we're 13 years in Mexico. And she was chasing someone who had stolen from the store out into the parking lot and tackled this man. And she was fierce. And she hurt her back. She had to have surgery. The drug of choice the hospital gave her was Oxycontin for her pain, and morphine in the hospital with the Oxycontin. When she left the hospital, I think she was already at that point, just those days, 2 weeks in the hospital, might have been addicted. But they gave her a prescription for only 7 days. But that didn't help the pain. So she went to another doctor, and she could sweet talk some of those doctors into giving her more Oxycontin. She just kept thinking that as she healed, the pain would go away, and then she wouldn't need it. And that's not what happened. She went back to the cannabis was a sort of, she described it as self-soothing. It made her feel calm. She didn't feel so anxious about the pain. She felt she could function better. But I got a call this was about a year after that episode with the back, and she was trying to heal. She was sitting in the parking lot telling me that her husband, she thought, was having an affair with this woman because she found a note that invited him to a party. I said, Heather, that's not Louise. He's not doing that. But I had a memory when she was younger of her coming to me with some of the most bizarre things, and I didn't know about psychosis. I did not know cannabis could do that. I've never had a drug in my life other than when I had surgery. And I really did like the morphine button, but I was so glad that it was just the button and I could go home. But I have to tell you, it was really, I knew something was very wrong. And so I started talking to her to get some help. I asked her about drugs. No, Mom, I don't do, I just do the cannabis sometimes. But it wasn't the truth, because drug addicts they can't discern the truth anymore. The need is much greater than the truth. So I talked to her husband. He said, I think she might be back on drugs, but it's being hid from me. And out of the blue, one day, my daughter disappeared from work, from her life, and the only information I got was from somebody at the store that was her friend, was they thought she had gone to San Antonio to meet someone she had known when she was young that just got out of prison. I was like, how could that happen? She had just gotten her bachelor's in, she wanted to become a juvenile probation officer. She was going to school. We were so proud of her. And I have to tell you, when they become adults like that and they have kids, it was a false seduction of safety that she was fine now. Nothing like that would happen. She's not going back to drugs. That would be stupid, and she's smart. I started looking for her, calling, trying to see where she was. She made her way to Houston with this man. She did call the house, and it just didn't sound like my daughter. I said, oh, here we go. Okay, God, you better give me what I need, because I'm fixing to step in. I got to be the mama. And but before I knew it, she really did disappear from me. No calls, no nothing. I reported her as a missing person. they kept telling me they would get in touch with me if they found her. 3-4 months went by, but I still was calling. I informed them I wasn't going away. She couldn't just disappear. And she had to be somewhere. And she's a drug addict, so she can't get very far unless, she's hitchhiking, and that wouldn't be her. So the gentleman that I spoke with, the detective, the last time I called said, "Oh, we found her a couple of months ago." I said, "You found my daughter a couple of months ago? And you didn't call me?" And he snapped very quickly and said, "Well, ma'am, she's an adult, and we don't have to give you any information." I said, "Where did you find her?" "She was in a dumpster looking for food." My heart broke. That's when I really got in the car and started. I was going to search Houston street by street. I was going to find her. She needed money for her drugs. I knew at this time there was probably nothing she wouldn't do. So I went to those areas of town where probably shouldn't have. But it's really strange. I never felt afraid. And I kept saying, okay, this is just the mama in me. This is your rough upbringing. This is having your parents addicted to things. You know how to deal with this. You can do it. And so I never found her myself, but that's when people started to see her that knew her under the underpass of 45 in 1960 in Kirkendall here in Houston, Texas. That's not a very kind of nice place. So then I started going to the motels and things out there. And I was advised by several very nice black men who said, "You better get out of here. You don't belong in this area. I'm going to show you how to go, blah, blah, blah. You get out of here." They tried to run me off, which I thought was wonderful, really. But I got a few phone calls from her she never asked me for money. She said, "Do you think you could bring me some underwear? I haven't had any underwear in a long time. I'd like to see you. And do you think, Mama, that you could, maybe we could just go have a meal?" And I said, "Yes, I'll make that happen, but I need something from you. And this is not a bribe. You think it over. I'm going to bring Karen, who is your best friend. She's a notary. And I need you to notarize papers for me to have guardianship of Jacob. Because I need to be able to do what I need to do for him as he grows up. I don't want to take him away from you." And actually, a little side thing, I knew that taking a child away from a parent, you have to prove that parent unfit. It's really difficult, but I was not going to do that to her. And I told the courts, as long as I get to decide where he sleeps, lays his head, I'm good. And that's what I got his guardian for the guardianship. And of course, I didn't bring him with me, but I went and picked her up. I took her to have a steak. I thought that'd be the best thing. I'm not great on nutrition. Turns out she ate the steak. It was the best thing in the world for her, but she lost it almost within 30 minutes of having eaten it. She didn't have, I guess, all that stuff she needed in her tummy to work with that. She signed the papers, and I noticed she wouldn't really look at me. But I made her look at me before I took her back to where she was at. There were people with bats standing outside. There were prostitutes, very clearly prostitutes. There were people fighting in the courtyard of this hotel. And poor Karen was terrified. And I kept saying, "We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine." But it was a little bit intimidating. She got out of my car and walked away. And I did not see her again for a very long time. the next time I saw her, I don't think it matters how many times you see, but the one that sticks out is Jacob was 8 years old, and she showed up at my front door. And this sounds like the timing's not quite right. It's because we went through all of the drug stuff prior to her going to Mexico, and she was with this man prior to Mexico. So in my mind, I'm clear, but I understand that might not have been real clear because she was sober for so many years and then hooked back up with this man. So I'm keeping the story straight, but I had Jacob. She showed at my front door, and a police officer was with her, and she wanted to take him. And I said, no, we're not doing that. And the officer said, do you have legal custody? And at the time I didn't. And I looked at the officer and I said, he's not leaving this house. Give me just a minute. I'm going to put him in the back room with the TV loud. I did. I came back to the front, and she was mad at me because I was co-signer on her car. And when she was in one of her stupors, I did go over to the apartment. I found the car, and I had someone with me, and I drove it to my house, and I caught up all the payments thinking she'll get better, it'll be okay, and I put the car in my backyard behind the fence. She wanted her car. So she came to bargain, really. I won't take Jacob if you give me my car. You don't do that when you are a mother and she was trading him for a car. Now, I didn't get mad at her. I knew this was not my Heather Nicole talking. But the officer said, I'm sorry, ma'am, if you don't have any papers, I don't think there's much I can do about this. I said, wait just a minute. Have you ever been taught about discernment? I said, make her roll her sleeves up. And he did. And the needle marks were horrendous. I said, I am not sending this child with his mother. I love her, but she can't have him. Not now. So you either use discernment here in this situation, or you call out the army, whatever you have to, because we're going to have a battle, and I don't have a weapon. I just got my mouth, but you're not getting in this house. So he smiled at me. He said, Heather, I want you to come get in my car. He took her out to the police car, talked to her for a few minutes, brought her back and said, if you will pay for her to get back to where she wants to go with an Uber or cab, I think it was a cab at the time, then she will leave. I said, done. But she cannot see or have or hear my credit card number to the cab. So however they fix that, do it, because she can't have it. And then again, she went off, and I didn't see her again for quite a while until she kind of sobered up. And then now we went down that path of her being sober. But she went to Mexico, and now she's not sober anymore, and she's with this man, and she is really sick. So in one of the phone calls, I told her, I said, look, I love you, but I don't think you need to call me again until you're ready for what you know you have to do. You have to get sober, and that's a process. But I'll be ready on my end of whatever we need to do. I will find the people that will help us. I will find the organization somewhere to put you in that I can afford. I will do everything I can. But I can't do the keep calling, because when I hear your voice, it makes me just want to cry. I want my daughter back. And so she didn't call me for about 2 years. It was awful. That's actually when I went looking under the underpasses and things and sort of regretted that I had told her not to call me. let's see, on April the 7th, it was 2019, right before she died. And her birthday is May 1st, so right in those months. Come on, girl. I got a call from her, and she said, I'm ready. She said, Mom, I'm going to go to Ben Tom. I'm already in withdrawals, but I'm ready. Whatever you want me to do, I'm ready to get sober. I said, okay. And I said, where are you at? She said, 1960. I said, can you call your dad and ask him to come pick you up? We were divorced. And I'll meet you at the hospital. Because I know at this very moment that my husband, Rodolfo, is not going to want me to drive out there. And the second thing, he's going to want to be with me, and he's in the middle of piano lessons. So can you do that? She did. Her dad picked her up. But even by the time she was just in full-blown psychosis. And I asked her, I said, what do you have that you know in your system? And by now, we have gotten into her big drug was fentanyl. She was so addicted to the fentanyl. And she, with so much shame, and I couldn't see it in her eyes because she'd never look at me. I remember her telling me before, I am so addicted to fentanyl, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. And I don't care if I die, making sure I get my fentanyl. When I walked in, what I saw, I had to double take because I couldn't believe it was her. The weight loss, the horrible, she was just in horrible condition. She did not look like my daughter. I would have passed her had I not specifically been looking for my daughter. Inside the emergency room, the doctors come in, they try to get blood. The doctor calls me out. Now I have a video of this I don't watch often, but she had her knees pulled up to her chest like this. And she was rocking back and forth. And she was saying, oh, it just hurts so much, Mom. My stomach hurts. And Mom, make them do something. They have to do something. I can't stand this. Well, this is withdrawals. So that doctor said to me, he called me out of the room. And he said, Miss Hill, I want to tell you something. Her veins are so collapsed, we can't draw any blood. I mean, we have to cut. It's just very bad. She is in withdrawals. I said, she just wants methadone. She wants to be in a clinic. She's here. I've been searching for you. You have to help me get her in a clinic. And he said, Ben Taub is not authorized or licensed to give methadone. And she can't get in a clinic until she gets approved and sent by a doctor. And we can't do that tonight. And I said, you can't leave her in this state. I mean, I take her home and I'm willing to do whatever, but then what do I do? And I remember he was maybe 6'4", 6'6", and I'm 5'2", 5'3", but that man spread his legs as far as he could to become eye contact with me. And he said, you cannot handle, love won't do it, but you can't handle what she's fixing to go through. And it could be her death. So I'm going to tell you something, and you aren't going to like it. And every fiber of that mother body is going to fight me. And I'm kind of preparing for a fight, you know? And he says, the best thing you can do for her right now is to take her to go get some drugs. Let her go buy some drugs. This is a physician telling me. He says, she's in so much pain, the drugs will help her, and then Monday you pick her up and you come take her to one of the clinics. They're going to insist you see a doctor. They'll send you to another doctor, and maybe you can get her into a clinic. But clinics generally don't accept anybody on the weekend, and it's Sunday.
One thing about not having a phone, I have to memorize phone numbers, which I don't do very much.
by then she's screaming and crying, and I got to get out of here. They can't do anything for me. I need a cigarette. I got to get out of here. She gets dressed and she takes off. So I leave and I go out the door and I see her over in a trash can right by the door looking for cigarette butts. She's looking for cigarette butts on the ground. And I said, Heather, come on. I had to call my husband to pick us up, and I did, and I knew he was on his way. And this has been Taubman. There's kind of a park across the street. And Heather bolts across that street. To this day, I have a special needs son, and I have to take him to the clinic that I have to go down that street. And I see that trash can where it is, and she was over at that park, and she was dumping that trash. She wanted a cigarette. So finally, my husband shows up, and we get her in the car, and he says to me, kind of quietly as we were trying to get her in the car, honey, you can't bring her to the house. And I looked at him, I kind of snapped. I said, are you kidding me? And he said, no, I'm telling you, I don't know that you can handle this. I said, well, I wasn't going to the house anyway, but don't tell me I can't bring my kids in the house. So I was a little raw by then. And I drop him off at home. I've got Heather in the car. She's full-blown psychosis. Mom, Vance is hunting me. I see, he's over there. I see him. He's following us. And I said, no, honey, I don't think so. And then it hit me. Wait a minute. I need to sort of agree with her. Don't argue. Don't argue. Because I have this little voice in my head, but it's not the schizophrenia one. It's more like the God one that talks to me. And I said, Heather, okay, all right. So remember, that man chasing her is what made her to jump out of a moving truck. So this was serious. I said, Heather, I'm going to take you back out where you were. And she said, you just drop me off. I can get there myself. I said, no, I'm taking you. Because she hurt her leg when she jumped out, and she was limping. And she jumped out, remember, just the night before. I took her back out to 1960. And she said, here's good enough, drop me off, just drop me off. And I said, Heather, I'm not going to drop you off. Now, we're April 7th. It's already warming up pretty good. April 8th by now. And I said, listen to me. I'm going to take you to where you need to get whatever it is you need, whatever drug you need, honey, to get out of this pain. But you got to promise me I'll come back in the morning. I'll come back tomorrow. You give me the time. I'll be here, and we'll go find that place to get you well. And I said, I put $25 in the backpack, but if you need more, I'll give it to you. And she wouldn't look at me. The shame was horrible. And she said, okay, go up here, turn. We went into the area right off of the feeder of one of those kind of sleazy hotels. And she got out of the car. She went up the stairs, and I was thinking, because I'd watched a lot of the, I like crime shows and things like that. So I backed my car up against the fence so they couldn't come behind me. I pointed it in the direction to get out of there. And I watched her, and she was not in that room 30 seconds. I pulled my camera. I started videotaping her coming out. In fact, it was so fast I could hardly get my phone out of the purse to video. But I did get her coming out of that room. She came down, got in the car, and I said, okay, now where? She just dropped me off. I said, no, where are you staying? I'll take you there. And I took her to some abandoned apartments. And as we're driving there, or we can get there, and I stopped the car, she wouldn't look at me. I said, you know I love you, right? She wouldn't hug me. She wouldn't kiss me. And she said, Mom. Actually, she said, Mother. She usually called me Mama. And she said, I think this might have been the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, but thank you. And that was buying her drugs. To this day, I go, was it right? Was it not? What would have happened? No, she's out of pain. But you see, I lost her because I watched her go to this apartment. I took a photograph of the apartments and where she was, and I went there. I waited and waited and waited, and she never came out. But every person that went back in those apartments looked like they could just eat me for lunch. And it was scary, but I knew they were all somebody's kid. So I put my little bubble around me. I'm going in. I got to see for myself. So I didn't kick the door in. I just pushed real hard and it opened. But I went in, and it was just like the movies that I've been watching. They're laying piled on each other against the walls. They're so stoned. They're so drugged out. And I thought, I am in the den of. I'm in the middle of a brain of psychosis. That's what I'm doing. I'm here. And all these people are under the influence, but I'm saying crazy in my mind. She wasn't there, and I left. I didn't see her again like that. I did everything. I did things I knew even my husband really didn't want me to do, or he didn't know when I went looking for her. And finally, something told me she was dying. I mean, she was going to be dead. She was going to be found dead. I was laying on the couch. I had my pajamas on, and it was June the 5th, 2019. About 10:15 after 5, the phone rings, and it's her best friend. She had stopped on I-45 to get a new tire for her car, her truck. And while she was there, some man came, this was at a discount tire, some guy comes running in and says, "Hey, there's this woman out there in the woods and she's naked and she's not breathing. Better call an ambulance." So they called an ambulance. Karen, the friend, gets her tire on, and she gets in her truck and she drives off. But she does see the ambulance come, and she sees them carrying somebody on a stretcher from the woods. And she calls me, and she calls me Baba sometimes. She says, "Baba, it was a weird feeling. I just had a strange feeling the whole time, but this is what happened to me." As soon as she said they carried this woman from the woods, I said, "Oh my God, Karen, that's Heather." I called the hospital and I said, "My daughter's there. Her name is Heather Nicole, and she is going to be unconscious. Please go look and see if she's there." They said, "No, nobody's come in like that." I knew she was brushing me off. I sounded like a crazy woman. I got it. I'm calling for a Jane Doe before the Jane Doe shows up. So about 5-10 minutes later, this nurse calls me. She says, "Ma'am, I don't know exactly what's going on, but we got a Jane Doe here with the tattoo on our arm that says Jacob." I said, "I'm on my way. That's my daughter." And I get there, and she's in ICU, or the emergency room area, and there are police standing at the foot of her bed. And I open the door and say, "Oh, Heather, Heather, Heather." And she goes, "Mom," which I sank because I went, "Oh, God, she's alive," because her eyes were closed. They'd given her that Narcan. Yeah, Narcan. Revived her, but she was completely paralyzed. When you have that much drug in your system, it starts to eat the protein out of the cells. And she couldn't move. She could move her eyes like this. She couldn't turn her head. And she could speak softly. And when I told the officer, she went and got drugs on April the 8th. And I have a video of the hotel she came out of. "Can I give it to you? Will you go over there and do something?" And he said, "Sure, I'd like to have it." So I gave it to him. They left. I'm in the hospital with her for 4 days. And she had gotten her son, and they were kind of cross. He was so upset with her because the last time she came, he said, "Vava, I think Mom and I are going to make it. We're going to be okay." And she'd come and she took him to get his first tattoo. I didn't say a word, but I sure wasn't happy about it. They went to get the tattoo together, and then they went to Galveston. They had a great day. And then she disappears and she relapses. We had 4 days with her. And that was the end of her life. But she was a wonderful person, and we loved her.